Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Wire Wrap. I'm Jahnavi, and a lot has happened in the last week. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hoisted a saffron flag in Ayodhya. The Supreme Court has issued an advisory opinion saying it cannot tell governors that they have a limit in terms of giving their assent to state legislative bills. BLOs across the country say they are facing immense pressure due to the special intensive revision of voter rolls. And India has lost a test series to South Africa. With me today to talk about all of this, I have senior journalist and author Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay and the editor of the Wire, Seema, Chishti. Thank you both so much for joining me. Let's start with what happened earlier this week in Ayodhya. There was a ceremony to mark the end of the construction of the Ram temple, which was built, as we know, on the site where the Babri Masjid once stood. And at this event, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hoisted a saffron flag, made a speech where he said this ceremony marked the healing of centuries-old wounds. He claimed this was the onset of Ram Rajya, it's going to bring prosperity and equality. But leaders from the opposition have said that this was not the right move, that the leader of a republic, a secular republic, should not be invoking religious sentiments in this way. In addition, the Samajwadi Party MP from Faizabad, Avdesh Prasad, has said he was not invited to the event because he is a Dalit. Modi made no mention to the specific history of the site, the Babri Masjid demolition by Hindu nationalists and the deaths of at least 2,000 people in the aftermath of that. And in many ways, this event was not surprising because we saw the very central role the Prime Minister played last year just before the Lok Sabha elections during the consecration ceremony. But I want to ask you both, what does this particular ceremony say about the state of India today? If we can start with you.
Several things. The first thing is, of course, Modi and Ayodhya. Now, one of the most peculiar thing about Modi's political career is that the Ayodhya agitation, which has actually put the BJP where it is now, Modi had no role to play in that entire movement, right from the mid-1980s, from 84, 85 onwards, till 92, 93, which is the actual movement part, the agitation part, which led to the demolition of the Babri Masjid. The only one time that he went was during the Ekta Yatra, and that was actually just to go and mark a presence. So, to make up and actually have, if you can imagine a political CV of Modi, then he has actually gone on the overdrive while being Prime Minister. He is not allowed a single opportunity to pass him by. After the 2019 judgment of the Supreme Court, he personally performed the Bhumi Pujan, even though in November 1989, the Shilanyas had already been laid. Shilanyas means the foundation stone. So why another Bhumi Pujan? So of course it was creating event for Modi to be there. This was then followed by the consecration ceremony, and then finally this is the third ceremony which Modi has personally done as far as Ayodhya is concerned. In between, there were these two ceremonies regarding the Indian Parliament House also, an institution where the office of the Prime Minister has no role to play. Parliament, Indian Parliament is only the President and the two presiding officers and the Secretariat staff. So he found another opportunity to do a Bhumi Pujan in December 2020, and then eventually when it was inaugurated on very close to, or it was precisely on the day of V.D. Savarkar's birth anniversary in 2023. Yeah, that is it. So that is one thing. The second is that this entire journey of Modi, it shows that the lines of separation between the state and the religion are being consistently being blurred under Modi. Ayodhya and history. Now, here Modi goes back to what I call as the Savarkar's description of what is history. Savarkar said, while talking about Hindutva, that Hindutva is history. But this history is not what everybody understands. It is also not the history of spiritual history or actually a religious history, but it is what a concept called the history in full, which incorporates mythology and epic traditions. So that is why Modi is attacking all those who say that Ram is a mythological character. For people like us, we say that he's a mythological character, not history. Modi, in his speech, very significantly, he attacks people that how can they say that this is part of myth, this is not history, or Lord Ram is not a historical character. So there are many of these issues, line by line, you can actually critique Modi's speech, all of it, if we actually try to do we'll possibly end up writing, a half a thesis, of all his speeches from Ayodhya alone. It makes for definitely a fairly long analysis. And of course, speaking about is going to take hours and hours.
So I must say he's written two very fine books. One is a biography of Modi and the other on the entire Ayodhya agitation. So yeah, clearly there is something there for a third. So the way I see it, there are, he's kind of put the detail and the lens, he's cast that very sharply. I think there are twofold things. One is what stuff is going on about Mr. Modi to cast himself as this sort of imperium, this new imperialism, whether it is carrying the Sengol into the house, whether it's sitting on the rooftop and inaugurating. So you pick up what you like about the constitution, which you can't immediately get rid of because of a whole lot of international reasons or perception, but you somehow fuse the whole idea of a permanent presence of Mr. Modi at the helm. So it's a Modi government. And if there's bad news, it's never the Modi government. If the rupee is crashing, it's not the Modi government, then it's just global turbulence which is leading to that. So there's that fashioning. But at the second level, I think, as he said, there is this permanent kind of destroying the Indian Republic by trying to convert a whole ideas of civic nationalism, a composite plural India into a Hindu Rashtra. And these are people in a hurry. And while this has been happening consistently since definitely 2019, but now more so after 2024, which is why there's a repeat inauguration. And I fear it will be a never-ending thing. So it's not as if it's like over or the inauguration is complete, it's done. There's another statue inauguration that Mr. Modi is doing. So there's this constant kind of, so that at two levels, one is politically to change the nature of the Indian Republic, and number two, the sense of how you imagine history. So there's an imaginary history of 500 years of strife over the Babri Masjid, whereas recorded history and histories and scribes are doing the recording. There's nothing happening from 1527, when the masjid was built, till like 1890s, when the first recorded disputes, which did happen, no doubt. Nothing happened till then. You talk about that history, so that seems close, but the history after that, where there's December 49, when the idols were placed at the site, to now, that history is kind of erased. And that, I think, is a larger message to the way you want India to remember its history as just of permanent strife. It's pretty much like what Mr. Macaulay would have wanted, or the Brits would have wanted, this Hindu, Muslim and Christian history, which should now be restored to a Hindu history. So I think the societal Hindu history plays here, and of course refashioning the Republic by trying to turn it as close to a Hindu Rashtra as possible.
I think taking from that, I wanted to ask you both about the symbolism of the flag that he hoisted. What does it mean for a Prime Minister to hoist a Dharma Dhwaj, as he called it?
He's hoisting this flag, and he's also saying that he's reciting Satyamev Jayate Nanritam, and then goes on to elaborate that this flag is calling out is actually symbolizing that what has already been said, So the flag is actually calling out to the emblem, that this is what is the full thing. So I think that it is highly problematic, because on every occasion he is presenting the Ram temple as the real symbol of India, of Bharat. That is how they are presenting it, and not talking about the existing symbols which actually symbolize and depict the Indian Republic.
This is also problematic for another reason, that the saffron flag, that particular flag, is also deeply resembles the RSS flag. And the RSS had issue, they had beef with the Indian tricolour. They did not accept it till 2002, when they hoisted it in that year for the first time at their headquarters. So they're kind of, and even the coins that Mr. Modi's government put out for the RSS, marking the 100 years, had that flag, had that RSS Dhwaj on it, not this. So this flag is also contentious, and if you'll recall, when the former Chief Justice went and called it the Dhwaja of Justice and was part of an unfurling ceremony, that did create problems, because these are important symbols. A whole lot of people, the so-called 1.4 crores that they keep talking about, have come to India because we share a compact to be the best of who we can be, with all our differences, our pluralities and our diversity. But we've not all come here to be sworn into a particular faith, a gender, a kind of food, a kind of election and a kind of opinion. So I think this is just to try and confuse that. And this also, as somebody pointed out on social media, this is happening at a time when all madrasas and masjids were told to unfurl the tricolour, which also is probably not necessary, because one is not saying that you unfurl the tricolour. at a mandir. It's not required. You unfurl things. But when the Prime Minister goes and does that, and we know the history of Rajendra Prasad, the first President of India, and his quarrel with Jawaharlal Nehru when it came to Somnath. So the participation as the Prime Minister, private activities are fine, but as the Prime Minister and as the head of government sends a completely different, a very strange message to people who may be of different faiths.
Absolutely.
Importantly, a very short point. It also completely reverses the hierarchy within the Sangh Parivar. If you look at all these ceremonies, right from August 2020 to now onwards, the 3 ceremonies in Ayodhya, Mohan Bhagwat plays second fiddle to Modi. Within the Sangh Parivar, all these decades, the RSS was supposed to be the ideological fountainhead and the others were the affiliated organizations. Modi has very carefully and very skillfully put himself above Bhagwat, and Bhagwat has accepted it. So I think, all that resistance from the RSS which we saw throughout 2024, which culminated in Modi going to Nagpur and making an appearance with Mohan Bhagwat, all that is in the past now, and Modi again is the supreme leader of what they are wanting to project as a Hindu India.
Right, absolutely. I'd like to move on now to the second topic we're discussing for today, which is an advisory opinion that the Supreme Court issued last week, which is that it cannot impose a timeline under which governors must assent to bills, governors and the president grant assent to bills passed by state legislative assemblies under Articles 200 and 201 of the Constitution. They said that such a timeline would mean taking over the powers of the governor and the president, and also that a law can be brought for judicial review only after one's assent has been given. Only in cases of prolonged delay, the court has said that then specifically the governor can be told to decide on a bill in those cases, but it has not said what exactly a prolonged delay would be. Now, this has come as a surprise because on the 11th of April, just this very year, a 2-judge bench of the Supreme Court, ruling on a case filed by the Tamil Nadu government, had set very much such a timeline. And then President Draupadi Murmu had posed 14 questions to the Supreme Court. This opinion has come as a response to those questions. Now, we have seen over the last several years how the relationship between elected state governments and the governors have become quite tense in several opposition rule states. So I think given that context, I wanted to ask you about how you read this Supreme Court advisory opinion. How should we see it?
Well, I think so that it is definitely, it goes against the principle of federalism, because the way I look at it, that if a state government cannot pass a law, then what is the need for a state government? The Supreme Court asks that if a governor cannot say no to anything, then what is the purpose of the governor? So the point is that I would like to frame it that way. For me, it is more important to have a state government because it goes with the federal spirit with which India was constituted, and this is what all our constitution says so. So it's highly problematic because it takes away the power of the state government to pass laws. I find it extremely paradoxical also because Modi as chief minister used to have problems with the governor of that time.
Or even as Prime Minister, he said cooperative federalism.
Yeah, he keeps on saying that's a mantra. The mantra need not be your belief. It's just for stating. Even as chief minister, he had several problems with the governor not passing bills which were passed by the state assembly, including a very important part which is in his agenda, and we are going to possibly see it in India very soon, because he referred to it again in one of his speeches in the recent days, that is compulsory voting. That bill was passed by the Gujarat Assembly and then it was sent to the governor. It was not passed, and Modi created a big noise about it at that point. So, and now he is doing the same thing if a state government is creating a problem. So, they are just walking on the path that he has already done so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a gaslight here by the Supreme Court to have answered this opinion, because the government is very careful to not go in for a review petition, but just ask for an advisory months after the court had a fairly radical proposal where they just cut short this pocket veto, because you have governors behaving in the most obnoxious manner. And our colleague Shavasti Dasgupta did a very fine story on Know Your Governors, like who are these people who are sitting almost like the viceroy's agents in state capitals, propounding policies, constantly standing in the way of state governments to pass laws, whether it's education laws on things that are firmly in the state quarter and just sitting on it and not doing anything about it. For the Supreme Court to say, oh, it's just an advisory opinion, this is not that, is very interesting and not, it's quite disturbing actually. It's less interesting and more disturbing. And them for having to say that, oh, you can come to us if it's very late. So, and we're not doing this because the Constitution is silent on this. Well, the Constitution is silent on a lot of things, and silence does not mean it wants the union's writ to be to just continue in perpetuity. So the court is now creating, actually it's inserting itself into this, while saying that this is about separation of powers, not speaking on the Constitution because it's silent on it. It's actually creating a role for itself. So now for every bill, state governments will have to juggle that, is it time now to go to the court? Yeah. And on which bill should they go to the court?
No, and it's also confusing because the advisory opinion is not legally binding, but of course the judgment would
be. It casts a long shadow on the order. And I think this comes, we've had a very confusing few months with the Supreme Court where the court has been just kind of turning back on its own orders and rulings. So you don't know what quite stands. And in fact, this stray dogs order was similar to this, that they say something once. So we've always known the Supreme Court to be polyvocal in ways that, say, the US Supreme Court is not, because of the functionality of being a large country and a large, they're sitting in division benches and not as one a court. But this is the taking polyvocal to another level to, turn on. And this is something which I think...
To reverse decisions.
Reversing its own decisions, you turning on yourself. And this is something which the courts have themselves commented upon mercifully 2 days ago. So there will be some more predictability to what the courts are saying, hopefully in future.
No, I think we have to see it also with the way in which the governors have behaved right from day one. Right from the beginning, this government has tried to actually co-opt governors from various places, including from the judiciary also after retirement. So basically, they have been dangling some kind of carrots. We're there. We of course know Ranjan Gogoi's biggest thing, that he got nominated to the Rajya Sabha within months of the Ayodhya judgment coming up. So there have been these cases, but if anybody in this government says that no, governors are doing their job, I would say that the best is you plot the political behavior of somebody who otherwise is a very good person. I personally have had very good interactions with Arif Mohammad Khan, but look at his role as the governor of Kerala, and thereafter, after he went to Bihar, he suddenly become very quiet, because he has a different role here. That is it.
Absolutely. One of the things that we've been seeing a lot in the news lately is the protests and then also, the deaths of booth level officers in various states where the nationwide special intensive revision has begun. They have said that the work pressure is extremely high. They are not trained adequately to conduct these activities. We've heard of alleged deaths by suicide in Uttar Pradesh, in Kerala, in Rajasthan. There are also BLOs who have died by heart attack, and their families have come in to say that they were really under a great deal of tension and pressure because of this process. Then we have the case in Noida where 60 BLOs are facing an FIR for alleged negligence during the SIR process. And in fact, perchance these FIRs were filed under the watch of District Magistrate Medha Rupam, who happens to be Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar's daughter. Now, observers have also pointed out that this is quite a complicated exercise because the 2002-3 rolls, which people are now supposed to prove that they were on or their parents were on, are largely non-digital, non-searchable, incomplete. And so unless, you happen to remember which booth you were in, which booth you voted in, what your voter slip looked like, have kept it for some reason for all these years, without that, it is really a painstaking process for the BLOs and also for citizens to undergo this process. I want to talk to you about both about this. The Election Commission has not responded to what the BLOs have been saying in this matter. So,
I have been undergoing this entire SIR process because I happen to be a voter in Uttar Pradesh, Yogi's land. And, for the last 10 days, we have been under extreme stress because in our family, while the details and the enumeration forms of the others was easily secured, my enumeration form was not traceable. I was finally able to actually identify because I have still not been able to procure an EPIC, so I do not have this identity card. What I was able to do is download one entire page of the voter details, which had my name, my father's name, the address, And of course, the most important thing, which is the Bhag Sankhya and the serial number, which is Bhag Sankhya is basically the section number, So we had that. I was able to identify the BLO, and about 30 calls, 40 calls were made. Initially, it led to a lot of exasperation, anger also, that why is she not picking up my phone. Finally, on the third day, all of this entire 3 days was spent in acute tension, not being able to focus on work because of that. Will I be left out of the voter list? I couldn't think for a moment that losing the right as a voter, was something very, would have been a big setback. So eventually I was able to locate her, and she said that I am sitting in such and such building, which in the township that we live is some few apartments away. I went and met her, and very surprisingly I found her a fairly nice person. She said that unfortunately today I am not carrying that bunch of forms because there is too much of luggage to carry. So will you come tomorrow? I will be available here at 12 o'clock. So I cancelled an appointment and went to meet her. And she said that I can't find your enumeration form. It is not there. That is the only one which is missing of the entire lot. So don't worry, I will try to get it. Then I said, can I not download it? Well, no, you cannot download it. Why do not you fill the form, online? I said, I cannot because my mobile phone is not linked to the EPIC. Because when all these things started, sometime at that point, technology had not had been advanced to link up mobile phones with EPIC. All that was not there. Plus, I am not part of the 2003 SIR also for various reasons, migrating from one place to another. Those were the very standard kind of reasons. Eventually, she managed to get a WhatsApp copy of my enumeration form. She sent it to me. And in the course of this entire process, my form was finally submitted yesterday. In the course of all these exchanges that I had, we became quite, we started developing some kind of an understanding of each other. So I asked her, what do you do otherwise? She said that I am a primary school teacher. I said, what is happening in your school? She looked at me and said miserably that now there is only one teacher. Normally we are the two people who are there. And that is it, that is how. And then she spoke about the kind of pressure. This is about 1200 लोगों के वोटिंग राइट वाले फॉर्म मेरे पास हैं और हर एक को कुछ ना कुछ परेशानी हो रही है. तो आप सोचिए कि दिन में कितने फ़ोन आए, तो किसका फ़ोन उठाऊं, किसका नहीं लूं, अपना काम करूं या फ़ोन ही उठाते रहूं. There are people who call up at very late at night. They are not people all the time. Are not, she said, they're not all who are decent calling up only during work hours time. So there have been tremendous pressure, plus pressure from the senior officials of doing it fast. Sitting down anywhere and feeding the data, they do not have any office. They are just told one day that you sit there and some सामान पहुंचा दिया जाएगा for you to sit there and do the data entry, all on mobile phones. That is it. So you can well understand why they are under so much of pressure, and there have been reports of. I would sympathize with the BLOs because they are doing a job in which they are not trained.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, these are largely school teachers, Anganwadi workers, people who work in the panchayat, things like that. And Seema, we've had also some state governments, Mamata Banerjee has written to the EC about the pressure faced by BLOs and why she is worried about it. What do you think the EC should do in this situation?
5.3 lakh BLOs responsible for 51 crore electors.
And this is, we have a case of somebody who can read and write, has an ability or net connection, is interested, is civil, going to the BLO. Just imagine people, these BLOs have to go to crores, lakhs of people who they have to fill forms for, help them locate what's going on, to put it and upload the form. The work that's involved here is one thing. What it does to the primary school teaching that has to be done, that opportunity cost I'm not even talking about. I don't know what the Election Commission is thinking, because they've clearly invented something called the Special Intensive Revision, because this doesn't exist. They are not parting publicly with the 2003 order, which they say they're mimicking, as they said in the case of Bihar. The time is ridiculous. I'm reminded of that book by Ornit Shani when she talks about the making of India's first electoral roll. This is what we're doing now. We've just decided that we're scotching this, we're starting anew. Do we realize how complicated, painstaking and difficult that process is? And now the two things that you thought, that Aadhaar and Epic card, are not to be considered, was what the position was. So I think it's a way of actually just torturing the Indian Republic to create fear. And also this word purification is very loaded, to just kind of give this sense of this obsession with kind of cleansing India of people who you think are not aligned with you politically. I'm sorry, it reeks of that. Whether it is cancelling OCIs of people who disagree because they have a case against the government, they're not against the nation, or going after youngsters because they demand accountability for air, and they may have made a point about some Maoist killing which they want to know the details of, which they are fully entitled to know. This all reeks of a highly intolerant, kind of a very crazed system and a lot of haphazardness to somehow just manage all the kids and somehow just put them in a room and say, sit down. And I don't know if the Indian people will really accept this, but the way things are going, all this SIR, the fact that Assam has been excluded for no good reason before elections, is really sort of very odd. Had they even said a special intensive revision over the next 4 years so that we have some kind of a list ready for 2029. But I worry about what will happen if there's a delimitation, if boundaries are redrawn, if there's other kind of chaos post-census. What are we talking about? So you'll just have these BLOs going to people, and then Mr. Gyanesh Kumar will put the entire responsibility on them, as he did shamelessly during this election. The responsibility, the accountability is of the highest in the land. You protect your team of people who are doing it. He put the whole blame on the BLAs and the political parties. It's not their job to run elections. He's granted immunity by Mr. Modi. Legislative immunity, that you cannot take the Election Commission to court on anything. Having been granted the usual Bangla Ghadi immunity, position, power, constitutional protection, you then put the blame on, now you'll start blaming BLOs for killing themselves. And as has happened with these 60 FIRs, they're being sent threatening letters. So I think all this kind of, when history is written, if it is at some point, this will go down as like a really dark attempt to almost capture democracy and then run it in a managed way with the electorate you think is okay.
Customized democracy.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, coming to our last topic for today, which is that it's not been a great time for Indian Test cricket. There have been 2 big losses on home turf in Test series, most recently against South Africa. And there's been a lot of anger against coach Gautam Gambhir after the most recent loss. He has said that it's because, there are transitions in the team and no one person can be held responsible. But online and also from former cricketers, from commentators, we have seen a lot of anger directed at him. I know both of you are followers of cricket, so I want to ask you, is that fair? Is that justified?
The criticism of Gautam Gambhir is absolutely fair, because I do not think that he knows how to coach a team and how to guide it. There are a few structural problems. Let me come to that. The structural problems for test match cricket, you got to practice. When are players practicing? When are players playing domestic long form cricket? Everybody is into the short form cricket because there is more money in it. So that is what is happening. Those who are playing test matches are also playing short form, either T20 or ODIs. Look at the Indian Test captain, Shubman Gill. He's also playing ODIs and as well as T20s. So players would obviously forget, what form they are playing. There are some players who are by nature aggressive. You cannot in any form tell Rishabh Pant to go and just protect your wicket. You cannot, because that is the way he's temperamental. And right from the 50s onwards, there have been players, who were, Farooq Engineer was another one, who was also a wicketkeeper, very much in that kind of a mold. But as far as Gautam Gambhir is concerned, I think that he is personally looks to be a very arrogant person and somebody who's not open to ideas. Now, anybody who's and also is not a team player. So I think these are the 3 basic skills which are missing in him, and that is why this is the state of the Indian Test team. Technically, yes. Why have so many all-rounders, who can neither bat nor bowl. That is the biggest problem.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really a metaphor of what's happening to India, like a damn good thing like the Indian cricket team, which has come out of the weeds now, is a different team from what it was in the 60s, which is losing test matches, and you go and destroy it. The amount of resources the BCCI has, it has 3 teams now and different captains, different stays. They should have figured something about lane driving and figured how teams should play. Then Gautam Gambhir says, you can't blame me because I did so well then. So if he's taking credit for matches that he won for India as coach, he has to take the flak for this. And this bringing of this kind of white ball aggression to the red ball play doesn't work. And as Nilanjan said, that you can't have in Test cricket now, you know that Cheteshwar Pujara is no more, Virat has moved on, so has Rohit Sharma. So what do you do about the transition? You can't keep talking about the T word as your big excuse, because you fix somebody in 3. I want to know why Sarfaraz is not playing. I want to know why other good players are not getting a place. Why is Washington Sundar opening here? Let him be at a good place. So, as he said, we don't... And this is apparently the coach's philosophy. He has no training as a coach. As a motivator, you can't just go and give pep talks. That's not the job of a coach. You need to kind of just bring a lot of things together, keep egos down, and enable a team to function. And he also says things like, we're beyond stars, etc. You know, there are 11 stars in a cricket team, as I think Sharda Ogra said, or another sports journalist pointed out, that you have to kind of nurture them, nurse them. And it's quite tragic that India has been dealt its worst test defeat ever, when we've seen spectacular test defeats at a time when an Indian is at the head of ICC, BCCI is rolling in money, we don't have the problems that, say, the West Indies team has or the Pakistani establishment has. We're just at the top of the league, etc. To be doing so badly on home ground, not being able to play spin or pace, just speaks poorly, and I hope it is not too much of a metaphor for what is happening to India under Mr. Gautam Gambhir.
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you all for watching.